communication was a push medium. You had to push your message through television, magazines, radio, newspapers. Now, communication is a pull medium. There are so many ways that you can reach your audiences that you have to pull your audiences in.
I feel like AI has been hyped to an extent where it has kind of become not analogous to some of the other technologies, which also had a similar hype cycle, right?
In my mind, what AI unlocks is unlimited possibilities to do more. So it helps you to kind of look into areas which you always thought was not your area of expertise.
Do you know what's the hottest programming language right now?
I wouldn't know.
It's English. You need to know how to prompt these systems.
Think about whether the client wants it or not. Talk to the client, listen to the client to say that, hey, you know what, would you be okay doing this? Do you think we should be doing like this?
Because we are living in a world where we are told that attention spans and goldfish are quite literally
There's no
the same.
scientific proof to that.
That's why I've always prefixed it with I'm told. In today's always-on world, perception travels faster than facts. In fact, it is not just about communication. It is about data. It is about number crunching. It is, in short, all about intelligence, but the artificial kind. And that's why we thought we'd bring you this conversation on HT Smartcast. My name is Sarthak, and with me, of course, Shivaram Lakshminarayan. He's, of course, the managing director of Rudafin India, and the man who decides on the technology of it all. Tejas Totade, he's the chief technology officer at Rudafin, and today we'll explore the alleyways of AI, so to speak, and what communication has to do with it in the world of communication AI. Let's dive straight in. The first question, which I have written down so that we have a good benchmark to level ourselves on. AI is, of course, now woven into everything. How we communicate, consume, trust, and decide. So to set the tone, in one line, what is the real opportunity that AI unlocks for the communication industry? And this is not about the future, because the future, we're told, is now. So, Shivaram, if we could start with you.
Okay, in my mind, what AI unlocks is unlimited possibilities to do more. So it helps you to kind of look into areas which you always thought was not your area of expertise. You always knew that, you'll have to go to a specialist, which we will continue to do so, because AI will only give you the ways and means of doing it. But then the human is the one who's going to give you the deep dive knowledge, what it wants. But it unlocks a lot of possibilities for each one of us in our professional journeys as well as personal journeys. So that's what AI will bring on to the future.
Excellent. And the man who's stuck between the zeros and the ones, Tejas?
I'm going to try to, give you. So when you say AI, I feel like nowadays AI is thought of as AI, and generative AI is kind of used in a similar way. So I'm going to assume that when you say AI, largely talking about generative AI, because that's the theme of the hour. So when it comes to generative AI, I think the opportunity lies in shifting from just crafting messages to making smarter decisions. I feel like that is the opportunity for comms in general, is how do you switch from just, if you remember when ChatGPT was out, it was like, write me a sonnet in the tone of Shakespeare, whatever, How do you kind of switch from that to really being about, oh, this is my audience. I want to, this is the persona that I want to reach out to. How do we kind of make sure that my message is going to resonate with them? And how do we kind of put the strategy behind it? So it's like smarter decisions, which is, I would say, like 2 steps beyond just like crafting smart messages.
Messaging is a very tricky thing, is it not? Yeah. Especially, as I said, in an always-on world. We're 24/7 assaulted by information, which sometimes masquerades as technology, which is something that we can come into later. I was interviewing a band from the 90s called The Strings.
I love The Strings.
They're beautiful, beautiful music. They had come out with, recently they came out with new music, and I had the opportunity of interviewing them. They said something very interesting. They said when we started, I asked them about it because they weren't releasing an album. They were actually releasing a song. And I asked them, what is the difference between when they started and what it is now? They said a beautiful thing. They said earlier, communication was a push medium. You had to push your message through television, magazines, radio, newspapers, and there was no 6th or 7th. Now, communication is a pull medium. There are so many ways that you can reach your audiences that you have to pull your audiences in. So my question is, in such a fragmented world where it has to be global yet personalized and individual, how does the messaging landscape look to you who are at the forefront of technology and messaging?
No, I think I will start here. So, if you ask me from a messaging perspective, what AI can help you is zero down on the consumer or the customer you want to engage with. I think very well said. I think it is about what the audiences want to know today and what is the perception you want to leverage. Therefore, you can curate your message accordingly. And given the generation is fast forwarded generation, so you also know that what is working today may not be working with the same audience for the next 45 days or so. So that means the messaging tweak will be required. So AI will help you to leapfrog that consumer behavior and customer perception. So that's where I would believe that AI has a very strong role to play. And that is where the speed of understanding the audience persona. I think Tejas can talk a lot about how do we kind of are able to create personas of our customer using AI technologies. And that is as real as you can kind of take it and start communicating to that persona immediately. So that's what AI helps us do today.
Sure. In the world, it's the seduction of speed is a very strong one, is it not? To get the message across in the fastest and the most pointed way possible. My question is there a subtle compromise on nuance of messaging when the focus is so much on speed, Tejas?
So I'll add to what Shiv said, and firstly, great reference to 90s indie pop. As a child of the 90s,
Yeah.
I can say that I miss that indie pop.
Oh,
I don't think we have found a solution to that. I think more than that, I think we need to find a solution to bring all of those bands back and
Yeah,
perform. But moving back to the topic, I think AI helps you really move, and I'm going to come up with a buzzword now, or a buzz phrase. It helps you move at the speed of culture. And that's essentially what these 90s indie pops band are trying to do. Is like culture is evolving at a much faster pace than what it used to in the 90s. And everyone is coming to pace with it. And AI is actually championing you as the communicator or you as the band or whatever to catch up with the change and the speed of culture. So I feel like it's in many ways a force for good. And I understand there are there's skepticism around the applications and implications and fair use and whatnot. We can always talk about that. But I think when you talk about the seduction of speed, I think that's the speed we're talking about, because it's not the communicators who are driving the speed. It's the culture that is driving the speed, and AI helps you keep up. Now, when it comes to how do you kind of keep it nuanced, right? That is where your expertise kind of comes into play, is really being empathetic in understanding who your audience is and knowing it to make sure that whatever you're putting out there is authentic. Because I feel like authenticity is the element that is being, or I would say, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I feel like when I hear such commentary about speed, I feel like the undertone for that is the authenticity or the trust. And I feel like as communicators, if we take those aspects head on and we think right from the get-go, like, hey, how do we make sure our messaging is authentic? How do we make sure it's trustworthy? I feel like then speed is scalar, not vector. So as long as we get this I'm sorry, the geek in me couldn't resist.
Absolutely.
But so as long as we take care of these key vectors, I feel like speed is not a force for bad in that
But
case.
I do have a question on that. That keyword that you use, trust. We've always been told that trust is built over time. And time and speed, if my mathematics lessons from the class or from the 10th have served me well. Is there an inherent dichotomy in what you're trying to say?
So I feel like it's, like I said in my last point, I think it's almost incumbent on us to be able to, our clients demand speed at this point, right? So it's not just something which we are thrusting upon anyone. I think it's something which has come to be expected of everyone. And I don't necessarily feel like time and speed have an inverse relationship, as you might, be implying. The reason being that now you have the technology that can help you get from A to B in the same amount of time it would take you previously, right? You think of, like, I feel like AI has been hyped to an extent where it has kind of become not analogous to some of the other technologies, which also had a similar hype cycle, right? So what you're seeing is that the hype cycle is shrinking. Like, you're going from, that S curve, which used to previously be like Aravallis, is now becoming like K2 or Everest or whatever. And I think that is the problem, really. And that's why you feel like things which would take its sweet course, like you think of internet, right? Internet went from being a niche technology in late 80s, early 90s to mass adoption, I would say, by mid 2000s. So it took like a good 10, 15 year cycle to reach that mass adoption. That S curve was pretty prominent. That's not, ChatGPT went from like 0 to 1 million in like 3 months or like 11, I don't know the exact number, but like very short period of time.
Absolutely.
That is the problem, which, I mean, that is not the problem, but that is the perception that is making you feel like, oh, are we doing something wrong here?
Yeah. And we've been trained to think of culture as something that that again takes a little bit of time to build. But Shivaram, sitting in quite literally in the middle of technology, the heart and the mind, so to speak, and having quite prominently the word managing in the presentation that you have. Is it difficult to manage these ideas and to take it to the client in such a way that both are balanced in a way that it benefits both?
See, the clients are always looking for a very balanced and a trusted approach. Like, they want an impact to be created. The speed in which the delivery has to happen is definitely shrunk, because if you today talk about from a consumer perspective, the kind of information access or the visibility to data is so high from a consumer or a customer perspective. They're also expecting brands also to speak in that particular tonality and language. That's the reason why the speed becomes a critical part. But having said that, they're also very critical about, like, they do not want to be a flash in the pan kind of a narrative that they want to build in. They want to build on narratives which are more resonating to the customer. Therefore, hence the ask is from our side to kind of say that, hey, can a brand now talk to this customer A who has this kind of persona, which is in a tier 1 market, but when you talk to a tier 2 market for the same persona, the brand has to communicate differently. So instead of looking at a 6-month campaign, we are looking at very, very specific targeted campaigns, maybe very short term, but very, very meaningful and impactful. And that is where we believe that, technologies like AI can help us, because when we ask the AI to kind of create a persona for a tier 2 market in Jaipur, or even a remote car market like in Haryana or something, it's going to be extremely different from a Gurgaon personality. So we need that kind of insight for us to develop narratives and content.
Now, there's another question that springs to mind on that one. Because we are living in a world where we are told that attention spans and goldfish are quite literally
There's no scientific proof to that.
No
that theory has been debunked, but yeah.
That's why I've always prefixed it with "I'm told" or "we are told."
Yes.
But yeah, shrinking attention spans are a buzzword, so to speak. I mean, there might not be scientific proof for that, but the fact is that today we are, as I said already, assaulted with information. Technology is helping the message get through that much quicker and exponentially quicker. That, to my mind, as a creative individual, the kind of pressure that puts on the churning out of the creative process as well, that must put immense amounts of pressure on the kind of communication that you're getting through, because by the time one communication gets time to breathe, it's already time, because technology has pushed it into the mind space already. There's already time to build another one. So how is that adaptation between technology and creativity happening, especially with Rudafin?
Okay, at Rudafin, I would say from an India perspective, definitely what we are attempting at is to kind of when I say we are looking at short-term campaigns, we are also looking at those audiences short-term, but how do you kind of create longevity? How do you kind of create that relationship with that consumer, the brand can have with that customer, wherein the customer's touch points can be at multiple points, but the focus of the messaging is about at that point at that touch point, is the customer listening from the brand what he wants to listen, or does it suit his persona at that time? So for example, during a festive season, if you want to push a offer, that's what the customer is looking for. Maybe in the non-festive season, he's looking at a USP of that particular brand that needs to be communicated to him. So while the spans might be limited, but the focus of the messaging is like, and if I zero in on my consumer, how do I keep the consumer engaged? And that's where technology helps you to kind of understand that, hey, the budget season is coming. So maybe the brand needs to now communicate in this particular manner. The festive season is coming. So maybe we want to do that. We're going to do a product launch. Same customer, persona same, but the messaging can tweak a little more, because I think a decade back, we used to have one message that used to run for a couple of quarters or at least 2 quarters in a row. Now we're looking at same narrative, making those tweaks and twists that can actually address the customer need and the customer behavior therefore. So yeah, it is a continuous relationship, but the kind of communication I'll have with the customer is going to be broken down into multiple parts.
But does that also affect memorability? Of course, I'm also going to come back to you about the proof of the pudding being in the eating and get to a use case scenario in the second half of what I have to ask. But the first, the memorability of it. I still remember one of the cars that I really wanted to purchase an Indian brand was because I saw this advertisement that said, I always wanted to quit on a Monday morning, and the tagline of that was reclaim your life. And it had time to breathe because I saw it everywhere. And because my exposure to that messaging was limited and constant. We have yet, I might be missing out on it, it's a little bit of a personal opinion, but those iconic taglines that we have had, Hamara Bajaj, reclaim your life, all of those. Do you think memorability suffers because technology and focus has to be so razor-edged?
So Sarthak, it's the other way around. So for me today, if you look at who am I listening to, like you started off the conversation wherein we touched upon saying that, there was one-way communication which used to happen. The consumer behavior was skewed to that kind of communication. Today, the consumer behavior is leaning towards multiple stakeholder talking to the same consumer per se. You have your content creators, you have your social influencers, then you have your traditional media, you have the internet, then there is a lot of social websites also throwing up communication to you. So from that perspective, if all the platforms, but each of the platform is very different. They have a very different meaning in each of our lives. So I may use a particular social platform for a very different use case scenario for myself, while I may use a traditional media outlet for another side of information per se. But if the brand is going to be present in all of this, but talking to me in that particular language, it's far more impactful for me to resonate with the brand. So that means I feel that the brand is living my experience, is creating experience for me to kind of engage further with that particular brand. So I would say that, that is how messaging gets tweaked today, because I don't want to be lost in the clutter. While there's a lot of clutter out there, I don't want to be seen speaking to an audience only in one format of communication. That is where you create a long-lasting relationship.
So what you're trying to say is that the language of memorability has changed and perhaps the perception as well.
Yes.
Tejas, another thing about this 24/7 world that we're living in is that we are also constantly told that the line between creativity and technology is blurring. I would love for you to tell us about the creative aspect of the technology that you're building at Rudafin.
So anyone wants to follow me on X, my handle actually is Creative Tech NYC.
Ooh.
So I feel like I'm pretty well suited to answer this question.
Yeah.
And the reason why I feel like we talk about push-pull in communications, and I feel like there is a constant push-pull between creative and technology. And I feel like one is pushing the other and vice versa. And that's what kind of propels a lot of these advances that we are seeing, where a lot of times, I remember this interview which James Cameron had before the release of first Avatar movie, where I should say Avatar because it's Indian audiences, right? So
well done.
Yes, thank you. And he talked about how he had this creative vision, but the technology was just not there for him to execute this creative vision. And it finally got there, and he was able to create this masterpiece that is Avatar, the first one, and also the subsequent ones. And so I feel like there's always going to be that push-pull relationship, which is healthy, really is a healthy relationship, which helps us drive more of these advances. Now, when it comes specifically as to how we do it in day-to-day world, I'll get to the use case, I think, which we'll talk about, but briefly talking about it, we literally just created a short film for one of our clients in a matter of weeks, what would have actually taken us about 6 months or so. And we used technology to do it, but we did not compromise on any of the human element. So we still had the same people who would be involved in creating a short film, but they were now using AI and technology. So instead of having like a physical camera do like pan, tilt, zoom and whatnot, you now have Mid-Journey, which will give you like 5,000 different camera angles. And the person who is the actual videographer or the cinematographer, is the one who is actually running Mid-Journey, because he has been trained on how to use this technology. And so instead of him doing this at a live shoot for like 10 days, he's now doing this in like a day. And so that is creativity being boosted by technology. Instead of kind of going through a storyboarding session, which would take you like weeks, now using VO3, you're able to do it in a matter of days. And you're able to create these storyscapes, which would then be translated into a short film. So that's for me a very real example of how creativity is boosted by technology without compromising the human element. Because I strongly believe that the subject matter experts need to be involved at all times, without which you're going to end up getting AI slop, which is a very real thing, which we don't want to happen.
Which is where the human element comes in. As you said, and that point is eminently taken. AI as a tool is brilliant. We're already seeing how it's making leaps, how it's helping by leaps and bounds the medical profession, where a doctor feels so much more empowered to do so much more.
Right.
But there is also, talking of use case scenarios, there's also the Ghibli arts example, which I think is always a shield to the creative individual to throw it. The creators have specifically come out and condemned what happened with AI and Ghibli. Yeah. And I think, to me, that was not wrong at all, because, and at the end of the day, do correct me if I'm wrong, but what we're told is that AI is actually a sum total of all technology, information, knowledge that exists, which is then, twisted around, which is where something that you said earlier comes back in a big way, which is trust and ethics. This is, I'm sure, territory for you, which is to be, not to be treaded with caution, so to speak. So I'd love to hear what you have to say about that.
No, I don't think it's, I really don't need to walk on eggshells with this, because we embody a lot of these principles in our day-to-day work. I think transparency is super important, right? When you're kind of using this thing, the thing which is eminently wrong with something like Ghibli is, I don't think the creator of Ghibli was consulted when this was done. So I think a lot of those things, so you got to realize that if I take a step back and I compare AI with internet, you have a lot of bad things happening with internet as well, right? And the reason why, well, in the early days, even now, you do read about scams, you do read about phishing, you do read about a lot of negative things that are happening with internet. That doesn't mean that the technology as a whole is bad, right? There are going to be good actors, there are going to be bad actors. And so you as an organization, we as an organization, we have a decision to make as to which actor we want to portray. And always we are going to be the good actors, because we want to champion creativity, communications, and everything through technology. And so for every Ghibli example that you give me, I can give you 10 examples from the internet age where there have been scams, there have been attacks, there have been just like bad things which have been conducted by bad actors with the use of technology. So I think that is why I feel very confident talking about this, because we will always champion the good actors and we will always kind of champion the ethics, because that's that is the only way to build trust and authenticity.
I also have to ask you about this, which is that, of course, I mean, there is no doubting about the focus and the weight that Rudolphin places on trust and authenticity and ethics. But there is also the question of being part of the whole and about shared responsibilities. Is that something? Because, as I said, again, going back to Ghibli, the creators have come out very strongly saying that we were not consulted, we are not okay with this, please stop doing it. That does not stop the internet, does it? Ever.
Right.
They were also known to have sent a katana to Harvey Weinstein when he wanted cuts in the movie, 3-hour movie that they had made, to show that no, we're not going to do what you do, which is actually the zenith of ethics, so to speak. So the responsibility, being part of a whole, and the sharing of that responsibility, that'd be something that I'd love to know, especially from the management side.
So the management side, at Rudolphin, we're very clear that, whatever we are doing, we will actually be very, very transparent in what we are doing. How are we using our AI tools that are work deliverables? And we are also very, very open in our communication. Our clients know what we are doing with AI tools. That's number one. And we constantly train our people. One of the things is one is using the tool, and the second part is how do you use the tool responsibly. So the whole training modules are developed in a manner that, when you're using the technology, how do you use it? One is ethically, number two, responsibly, and take accountability for the work that has been put across to the client. And we're very, very cautious about what kind of information that goes on to the AI tool. Again, it comes to the point that, AI only would react to what is being fed into it. If it has a repository of that information already in its sources, is when it would start reflecting. So we're very clear about that, if we do not have an explicit permission, we do have a set of clients in our portfolio which are very clear that, they do not want the teams to use any of the AI tools.
Okay.
So we are very clear to that teams that, there is no access to AI for that particular team. They're very conscious about how they're using AI, therefore. So yes, that level of responsibility and ownership is with us, and we think we owe it to our clients, therefore. So yeah, being very transparent, being responsible, and being accountable for the work you've been delivering is very, very critical.
Which also brings me to that.
Just add one more thing to
Yes,
that,
please.
like from the heart and mind, or the brain and heart, whatever analogy. So going to the brain, it's about building a brand brain, really. And I think that brand brain is reflective of all of the things which Shiv just mentioned, which is, making sure that we are being compliant, being ethical, being transparent in terms of how the brand needs to be kind of used, leveraged in any of the messaging that we put out for the brand, as well as how we want our associates to craft their messages as well as to communicate. So I think that brand brain building, tongue twister, really is what, again, AI is so good at. I mean, I don't know if you read about how McKinsey was able to kind of, reduce the initial process which they have for onboarding a client to just a few days by kind of being able to collate all the resources on that particular client and really kind of fashion it into this brand brain. So I think the process is similar, but it really helps kind of stay compliant and really makes it more meaningful in terms of use and purposeful in terms of use of AI.
For sure. The training bit that you mentioned in the brand brain that you're mentioning, yeah, it is a tongue twister. but no, thank God I got through it. But the question that I have is that in both, the synergy of technology and the human is extremely important. Which leads me to the fact that, the seduction of using AI, the seduction of treading that fine line between ethics and what looks good or what might be quicker, leads me to the question of training of the new age communications professional. Because, for something that looks so cut and dried and 0 and 1, the nuances are immense for someone who's communicating in the world that we inhabit today. So what are the tools that, according to management and according to technology, a budding communications professional needs to arm themselves with?
So for me, the starting point for any budding professional would be to know the technology in and out. So one of the things we often have understood is if you are using it because it is a good thing to do, or everybody else is doing it, hence I want to do it, is not going to work for anybody. So you will have to kind of spend some time in understanding what the technology can do for you, number one. Number two, then you need to kind of look at yourself and say, am I trained enough to use the technology in the most efficient manner? So that's the second part of the journey, which I think organizations like us are supporting our people to understand the tech. Now, the last part is once you understand these two, then you start putting the client angle into it. Think about whether the client wants it or not. Talk to the client, listen to the client to say that, hey, you know what, would you be okay doing this? Do you think we should be doing like this? So having today, most of our clients are very open to this, having this, because we are looking at a very collaborative modules of working today. And a client appreciates that kind of a conversation rather than saying that, I did something, I'm bringing up to you. And then it's like, after a period of time, you kind of realize this is not what we were expecting you to do, is a complete no-no in today's world. And I'm very glad that, if you're looking at today's generation, this generation is highly driven by ethics, sustainability. If you look at the traits of today's generation, they are more driven by these kind of social consciousness and ethical behaviors than I think some of the generations in the past. They don't take it for granted. So we are in safe hands when you're looking at today's generation to work with technologies like AI, because they understand the concept of compliance. They understand the concept of being ethical. They understand transparency, and they are fearless to say no. It's a very important trait today that, I have a lot of team members who can turn around and say, hey, you know what, I don't believe in this technology. So I do not think so. I want to be an AI champ.
Sure.
So we're okay with that. So that's.
But is that necessarily, the cut and dried no? Is that necessarily a good thing management-wise?
I think we should appreciate, because for every no's, like Shreyas had said, for every one no, we already have another 8 S's who wants to do it.
Sure.
And like I said, it's both sides. It's not only from the management, like the consultancy side, it's also on the client side. Also, there are some clients who do not want to do it. If you're looking at industry, very typical industries like banking, government, public affairs, they are very, very clear that, they want to use AI to a very, very limited extent. Maybe only a meeting notes is what they're looking at AI technologies to be used.
Right.
So when you are very clear about what the client wants, I would rather have the no person doing that kind of a job, because he's more than happy to do it.
Strategic placements.
Yes,
of course.
Exactly.
It's like a chessboard, is it not?
Yes,
Sometimes.
absolutely, yeah.
No,
It's always a chessboard, yeah.
Which is always the case with
Yes.
management. But your board is the universe itself, Tejas, is it not? I mean, the world of the internet, those arms are really, really wide. And for a budding communications individual, probably a little intimidating as well. So are there guardrails? Are there ways that they're taught? What about the technology aspect of it?
But I'm going to give a very right brain answer to this, if you don't mind.
Please.
So when I was growing up and when I was going through my paces with engineering and whatnot, some of the hottest programming languages at that time were C++, Java.
DOS prompts.
Yeah. So do you know what's the hottest programming language right now?
I wouldn't know.
It's English. You need to know how to prompt these systems. And so that is an inherent advantage that every communicator has, or every budding communicator has, is that they already have a very strong grasp on the language. They actually, what technology has evolved to is that it has abstracted a lot of the ones and zeros to a point where a budding communicator doesn't actually have to worry about learning a programming language or learning how to script or learning how to, really get what they need without, knowing a technology or a programming language. So English has become like the most important programming language right now, because you're doing prompting on a daily basis. And so communicators have this inherent advantage, which actually a lot of the technologies don't have, because as you know, a lot of the technologists are not people with many words, unfortunately. I'm probably the minority. So that's why I feel like it's actually to their benefit to embrace this technology, because I think they can actually go a long way and they can do wonderful things and do it in manner which is embodying all the principles which Shiv mentioned, given their educational background, given all of the principles that they have grown up with. So that I think to me, it's a bit of a table stakes at this point. So I feel like they need to kind of be able to embrace it. I understand individual, preferences and whatnot, but I strongly believe that if they don't do it, they're missing out. And for their own sake, I would like to believe that they would want to embrace it. Now, when it comes to what do they need to learn, as I said, English, right? But on a more serious note, I think tools have reached that level of maturity where, I'll give an example. It's like if you're in the US and you have to choose between cars at a certain level, it doesn't matter if you go with a Nissan Sentra versus a Honda Civic versus a Kia Optima. They're all going to be in that same kind of range. We call it 19-20 yahan pe in India.
Yes, of course.
Right? And so a lot of the tools are reaching that same level of maturity where you look at ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, all of them are kind of giving you similar outputs. Some people would probably argue that Gemini is better than ChatGPT, other way around, Claude is better for script writing, etc. I won't go into the nuances. But I would say look at what is it that you are working on and start with something. I feel like the fundamentals of prompt engineering, the fundamentals of how you actually interact with these systems are going to get to a stage where they're going to be pretty uniform, universal. And so if you learn how to really engage and interact with AI system, be it whatever tool, be it whatever technology, it is going to help you with everything else. It is reaching that point where you no longer need to be syntactically, like that was what we grew up with, where we had to know the syntax. It was like very tightly cast. It's like you need to know the syntax for Java, you need to know the syntax for C++. Now it's like everything is runtime. Nothing needs to be, so
sure.
Yeah.
The spirit of the bard himself, William Shakespeare, is asking me to ask you about grammar, but I'm going to ignore that about English grammar. We're not going to go there, but we certainly going to go to the end of this conversation because I'm sure this can go on for days. But since we're living in the world of social media, it's only proper that we ask you to make a bit of a listicle for us. So organization-wise, Shivaram, if I could ask you to give us 3 points that are critical to a communications individual today navigating the world of technology.
Okay, the first and foremost is I would say start off with thinking about what is the technologies you're going to be comfortable with. So make your list of tech you want to work on with. That's number one. Number two is like they just mentioned, equip yourself with the tools and the skills that is required for you to kind of use that technology, because that's going to be very critical. Because you cannot get into a room saying I know how to use a tool, but when it comes to the depth of it, you don't know how to do it. It's going to be you're going to be very short of your own deliverables per se. Then the third part is have fun doing it, because today what we have on hand helps us to create not 1 or 2 scenarios, but dozens of scenarios. You will have to have your human interface and the understanding of what the client really wants is going to be very critical, because that's the thing you can bring onto the table. You are the only one who kind of understands what the brand values are, what the brand behavior is, what the brand wants to communicate, and the scenarios that comes in front of you is what will help you to because the client is looking up to you. You are the counselor or the custodian of that narrative for the client. He is looking up to you saying that, it's very easy to say, here are the 25 solutions you can go after. No, that's not what the client wants. The client wants to say, hey, you are my trusted advisor. So I'm looking up to you. Tell me what are the best 3 things out of this. I will make the one choice, but give me the 3 best choices you think basis your research that is going to be more impactful in the market. So you need to have fun with the technology. So it's very important for you to then therefore bring all of the learnings, what you believe as a specialist you bring onto the table to that technology so that you're able to create that value to the client. So I think this would be some of the checklists you would go for.
Fantastic. And what about the tech brain?
Can we just repeat the question once more?
I'm just asking you to make a listicle of what is critical to a communications individual navigating the world of today.
I think Shiv covered most of the points. I think I'll go a little bit right brain with this one.
Yeah.
So I would say you really need to kind of, I would say, think inside the box in some of these cases, because what happens is that when with AI, and again, I don't mean to kind of just talk about AI. Technology in general sometimes people feel like it just like gives you the ability to do everything. Sometimes you don't need to do everything. Sometimes you need to like think about the box, you know? And I feel like not a lot of people are thinking inside the box. You can still be futuristic while thinking inside the box. Apple has kind of perfected that. So I would say like that would be number one. Number two would be having belief in you to kind of learn these new technologies. I feel like one of the things which I see, or I used to see at least, you know, when I was here like 20 years ago in India, is that there's always like a focus on learning curves. Like we always talk about learning curves, and maybe that's something which is a part of our cultural identity. We want to kind of go through the Gurukul to get to the level which, you know, you're considered a master. And masters right now are driven a lot by technology, and so they can kind of nix that learning curve and really kind of go from point, like it's like the time warping, you know, the punching a hole through the time space, you know, continuum. That's realistically possible, but you got to have the belief. Obviously, you need the ability. So I'm not going to go into the left brain now. I'm assuming you have the ability. You got to have the belief, because I feel like belief, at least when I'm talking about India, I used to think, and I was one of them, where I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm gonna, you know, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do it. It's only when you start kind of saying, yes, I can. And this is not like a shallow, like, yes, I can, but like truly, like I'm gonna put my heart and soul into it. I think it's possible. Technology is now giving you the wings to actually make it possible to punch a hole through the space-time continuum and warp, you know, the learning curve or whatever that is. I don't know if it's a curve or if it's a
peak or whatever.
Whatever it is at this point.
As long as it's a shape, I think it's
Right.
it's important. What's important to me, of course, is the wonderful thing that you said about being okay with the comfort zone from time to time. Being warm under the security blanket is okay, which is something that we all need to take away from this conversation. Navigating these wonderfully nuanced alleyways of artificial intelligence and what they mean for the individual and for the organization, and doing it so generously with the knowledge that you've gained with such hard work. We'd like to thank you, Shivaram and Tejas, for being part of this podcast. This means a whole lot to us. From Rudafin, of course. If you found recipes to cook some food for thought, remember you heard it here. And if thoughts are triggered, that's a great first move to action. So if you do want to tell us what it means to you, comment section is open. And like, share, subscribe if you'd like. Thank you for watching HT Smartcast. My name is Sarthak.